Hi, folks. I've been noticing a lot of questions come in about lockpicks and tools in the forums. And, some people are looking to get started, others are looking to upgrade their tools, but everyone more or less asks the same question like, what's the best set of picks that I can get? And the answer is always that it really depends. And what's interesting is that anyone who's been picking for a while has tends to have real strong opinions about their favorite tools, but a lot really comes down to personal preference. So I decided to make this video. I'm not going to tell you what the best picks are, but what I am going to do is tell you about some of my favorites, and more importantly, talk about some of the things to look for so that you can find your favorite tools. All right, first we'll start with the table stakes. You're going to want a high quality metal, high quality steel for your picks. And you can quantify this, but really the best picks are either made from 301 high yield stainless steel. So here's an example. There's a Lawlock Tools pick made of 301 high yield stainless steel. I also have a pick from Moki, and let's see, a pick from Jimmy Longs. All three of these made from very similar material. And then there's also 420 hardened stainless steel, and there are a couple manufacturers like Multipick and Peterson that make picks in that material. And look, you can really geek out in this stuff and get into the material properties, the tensile strength, and the hardness and whatnot, of the different pick materials. But really, my advice is to just go with a solid name brand, like one of the brands that some of the other experienced members of Lockpickers United use, for example. What you want to avoid is something like this. This is a no-name pick. It's made out of some pretty bad spring steel, and I don't advise doing that, right? Any of these brands will cover you, and certainly this is not comprehensive. There are plenty of great brands like Bare Bones, Covert Instruments, and plenty of others to choose from there. Next, you want the right thickness for your picks. All these picks here are have subtly different thickness. The Peterson's is the thickest. That's at 25 thousandths of an inch. The let's see, the Lawlock Tools and the Multipick are both 0.6 millimeters. That's close to 24 thousandths. The This Jimmy Longs is 23, so I'll put these all together. And then the Moki is a bit thinner, half a millimeter, right? So half a millimeter is about 20 thousandths of an inch, a little bit thinner. And there are plenty of other pick thicknesses. So, pick manufacturers make picks in multiple thicknesses. So here's a few more. This is another from Multipick that's 0.4 millimeters. That's closer to 16 thousandths of an inch. Here's probably the thinnest one I have, which is a Peterson in 15 thousandths. There's also a Peterson in 18 thousandths and a Jimmy Longs in 19. And so, there are some real trade-offs here. As you get into the thicker picks, you'll get stronger metal, you'll get better feedback, but of course it might be harder to get into tight keyways, and that's where the thin picks can really shine. But my advice is really just to make sure you got the middle ground covered. This range from 18 to 20 thousandths of an inch, really it's plenty strong, great feedback, and can get you into most of the locks that you're going to want to play with. Of course, if you like to go for the variety, where it fits, you'll get great feedback from the thicker picks, and there are of course going to be a few cases where you're going to need to go very thin. Let me just give you a concrete example to make it a little more real for you. This is a Corbin standard cylinder. It's not a particularly difficult lock. There's some spools in there, but the keyway's a little tight, and in particular, the way it's curved relative to how high you really need to lift these pins to open it. If you were to just take your thickest pick here, you could probably fit by levering off this part of the warding there, yeah, but that doesn't give you too much space to really get behind low set pins. So you're really going to want to pick from the bottom of the keyway here. And if you try to do that, you can just see the angle with this thick pick. I can lift the pin a little bit, but certainly not all the way it needs to. I stop about there for the highest set pins to get set. So you can instead drop to the middle, and this will work. So if I use this thinner pick, I can very, straightforwardly get to the pins, and I can push them pretty far up. I do feel a lot of pressure from the sides of the keyway, but this works, and I've picked this lock many times with picks of this thickness. But I have damaged some picks by doing that. If you were to drop even further down, like all the way, say, the 15,000ths, not only is it very easy to, get in there and push the pin all the way, but also I feel minimal friction with the sides, and so very smooth and easy that way. Just an example. Like I said, most of the locks, the middle range will get you through just fine. All right, now let's get into pick profiles. There's a ton of variety of different pick profiles. I'm just going to throw a few down. These are all rakes. They're used for kinetic attacks. We also have, of course, hooks like the ones we were just looking at. There are diamonds, either straight or deforest diamonds, that have a bit of a curve or bend to them. And there are all sorts of kind of special case type. These all have different various curves to them. This one even has, a notch on the end. So all these are picks you may be looking at in various sense and various lockpick sets. And really, we're going to be focusing on the hooks here, not because the others aren't interesting or useful, but the rakes are primarily used for lower security locks and for speed, opening things quickly. The hooks, which is why we'll focus on them, are for single pin picking, and so you can pretty much get into any lock in predictable ways with these tools. The hooks are used in a little bit of a hybrid sense. They can be used to rake, they can be used to single pin pick, like the hooks, or even to set pins directly by pushing longitudinally. And there are a bunch of special cases where you might use some of these types of profiles. But in any event, we're going to focus on the hooks. The one thing why I will say is that it's fun to explore. There's a whole set of techniques for raking. What I will call out is you generally find rakes in two different categories of profile. One set are the classic rakes. So here, this is a classic Bogota profile with the peaks, the pointed peaks here. This is another classic profile, the city rake with the different elevations here on the side. And then there's another type of rake. These are both, they're cycloids, but these, more importantly, they're mathematically modeled and based. And so, they're modeled off a mathematical function. And so you'll see variations in terms of the amplitude, how big those waves are, the frequency, how tightly spaced they are, the number, and even kind of the peakiness here. And so just two different types of profiles to watch out for. All right, well, when considering hooks, the most important property is the hook's depth. And so most manufacturers will have 3, if not 4, different depths from short, medium, and deep hooks. Right, so here's an example from Multipick. Here's another example of 3 different from short, medium, and deep from Peterson. And there are going to be other manufacturers that offer 4 different depths. And so their short might go a little shorter, and their deep might go even deeper. And that's the case here with Jimmy Long's. So you kind of have an extra short, medium, and deep. And another example is with Moki, that also, depending on the set, there could be 3, or in this example, 4 different depths here. And the reason that having the different depths is important is you can run into all sorts of different bitting in the locks that you try to pick. And that's why I recommend, whether it's 3 or 4, it's just good to make sure you have a variety. Make sure you have at least a short, medium, and deep hook. Let me give you an example. This is a key from a Ruco Garant Plus. There's a lot going on in this particular lock, but just look at the bitting here for a moment. If you were to take a short hook and try to reach this this pin back here, what is that, pin 3, right? You can see, even if you use the entirety of the keyway, you pivot off the bottom of the keyway, you're going to run into, just a little bit, but still, you're going to run into that second pin, right? However, if you use a deeper hook, you're going to be able to get around it easily, right? And a deeper hook still might allow you to even reach behind that second pin without having to rest your pick all the way down at the bottom of the keyway. So you're going to want those options regardless of the brand you go with and the other pick properties. You're going to want to make sure that you can reach pins at various depths. And that's really the end of my strong opinions on the essentials. If you're looking to get some new picks or upgrade to some new picks, go for high quality metal in the right thickness, and make sure you get a variety of hook depths. Any of these will allow you to pick most locks with, of course, the tension tools that you can make or find with any manufacturer. And if that's all you're interested, you really can stop watching the video now. But for many folks, that answer isn't very satisfying, because there's still lots of fine choices you can make. And clearly, I mean, you can just tell all these picks, they're different from each other. They look different. And so what gives? Which one is the best for you? And this is where it comes down to personal preference. But let me clue you in on some specific things you can look at so you can decide what you like the best. Okay, so what are those more subjective type differences between the picks? Well, one of them is the tip of the pick. So you can see pick tips could be flat, rounded, or even pointed. Those are common combinations. And there's another option, which is they can even be angled or slanted. This is called a gem profile. Okay, and of course the different brands are going to have there are different varieties of flat, rounded, and pointed. Some of them might not have all of those options. For example, with Peterson, the flat really only comes with the short hook, but there's a rounded and a gem as well, a slanted. And you can notice there's subtle variations. The rounded of the Peterson, for example, is more wider a tip than the one in the Moki, for example. And let me give you one more variation. Here's Jimmy Longs. There's a flat, a round, and a gem for Jimmy Longs. All right. Now, like I said, this is really more of a personal preference thing, but the objective part is that the flatter tips are going to give you more stability, while the more pointed tips are going to give you more precision and more control. Okay, simply because the flatter tips are going to tend to stay on the pins a little bit more easily, and the rounded one is kind of a trade-off between the two. It gives you more stability than a pointed tip, and more precision than the flat. And that's where personal preference comes in. For my part, if I can use a flat, I typically go with it. I like that extra stability, but there are some locks where you really might want to make a choice. So this is the Ruco Garant Plus that matches the key we were just looking at. And for a lock like this, it's a pretty challenging lock. There are barrels that get caught in matched countermilling, and so I prefer a flat tip there, because what you want to do is once you get all those pins stuck in the countermilling, you're going to want to bounce up and down while applying tension, of course, to be able to knock them out of the countermilling and properly set them. And so when you're bouncing up and down, I find the flat is a little bit easier. There are examples where you might want to go in the other direction. This is an Opnus MMX. It's a lever-based sidebar lock, and there are all sorts of levers between spacers here. And the pointed pick tips are actually small enough to get in between the, I can probably do it from this angle better. Yeah, there we go. To get in between those spacers. And I'm actually able to correct some overset levers this way. Useful to have. The only other thing I'll call out is the gem. And there are people out there who have real strong opinions who love the gem profile. I'm not one of them, but I will call out it's a little bit of a hybrid approach, right? When you start out, it gives you more of the precision of a pointed, because you're using this kind of inner angle, this inner tip, to trace or to touch the top of the pin. And then when you pivot to a certain angle, the flat part comes into place, and you get more of a stability of a flat tip. So it changes a little bit as you're picking. Next up, also a pretty obvious difference is the handles. There are all sorts of handles here, and you really want something that's comfortable for you. And so when you're holding a pick properly, I mean, lots of ways to hold a pick, but you want to make sure you can do something like this, where the middle finger is in touch with the shank for feedback, and you're stabilizing the pick with your index and thumb. Or I'm a left-handed picker, but here, if you're right-handed, it would look more like this. And what you want is really the pick to rest comfortably somewhere in this crook of your thumb, so that you have some good stability, and so that you can maneuver the pick in any which way without too much hand strain, right? And this is where, I mean, some of it is just, I tend to have bigger hands, so I actually love a huge chunky handle like this, just because I find it very comfortable. But part of it is, of course, personal preference as well. Trade-off of, this is, I love this handle, but it's very big. So if you're trying to pack a bunch of picks in a case or something, it's you won't be able to fit as many if they all have these types of handles. And let's see, I also, the materials are different, right? So you've got, that was acrylic. What I like about the acrylic or the hard plastic is they don't tend to bend as much as, say, this is not just thinner, but it's also a little bit of a more flexible plastic. But again, some people like that. The Jimmy Longs and the Peterson, like I really like this. It's a very hard plastic. It fits kind of beautifully in the hand. It's well weighted, and the Peterson's probably about the shortest as I'd go. Any shorter, I might run into a little bit of trouble and get into uncomfortable territory. There are also, of course, metal picks. It doesn't quite work the same though. So this metal, this is solid steel. Same profile, if you will, of the acrylic, but because it's solid steel, of course, it's solid, which is great, but it's also on the heavier side and doesn't feel, it's kind of light and balanced. Of course, if you have, a smaller piece of metal like the multi-pick, you don't have that heaviness, right? But this, I find the multi-pick is a little bit even too small for my hands. I don't like it for that reason. But, you can modify these handles. And so, here, for example, is a magnetic plastic overlay for multi-pick. And so, you can just do something simple like this. and problem solved. We got more of that stability here. A lot easier for me to use this pick like that. So you got plenty of options. I probably should have let me include also a Lawlock Tools example here, because it's also metal. It's big, however, like similar in size to the Moki, and so it fits nicely there. But it's a little thinner, so it's lighter, and therefore a little bit weighted, balanced more evenly there. So lots of choices. And I'll just call out because there are, of course, you can build your own handles, but there are a lot of great folks out there. Hazardous Manufacturing makes these two. They're great. These are stock Moki handles. What I really like about Moki in general is, you can just, there are screws. You can just put your own handles on, swap them. Some people I know even pick with the naked blade. They prefer that level of control. But of course you can modify anything if you put your mind to it. So Hazardous Manufacturing. Also you can get. I think I got these from Lockpicker's Bench, also another great company. And over at 44delta.com, they really do some beautiful handle work for all sorts of picks. This is a Moki pick, and this is actually magnetic, but you wouldn't tell just by the feel because it's so sturdy. And if I pry this open, you can kind of see why. Not only are there some seriously strong magnets there, but it snugs so fit into metal of the pick that it's really not going anywhere. So a lot of great options there. And again, as with the pick tips, you really just gotta try things out and see what you like the most. Last but not least, you might care about some of the finishing touches. Most picks require a bit of sanding or filing. There might be some burrs on them to get them really nice and smooth. Some manufacturers like Multipick, I mean, everything just comes out so beautifully right out of the factory. I've never had to do any touch up to a Multipick pick, and I mean, Moki's probably even more extreme. There's a real mirror-like finish that he's able to get with straight out of the box. You'll have that, but it's not just the finishes. Markings, Multipick, for example, very detailed. Every pick not only has a model number and thickness printed, but also an individual serial number and the date it was manufactured. Different markings for the thickness, whereas other picks can be more opaque. So it depends what you're interested in. Just calling out some of the other things to take a look at. So that's a wrap for today. Hopefully this helps you navigate all the different lock picks out in the market. These 6 criteria that I've talked through can really help you sort through your choices. I'm trying not to be overly biased here, but it's probably obvious what my favorite picks are. But more importantly, I hope you're able to find yours. So good luck out there and stay safe.